Get more perspective on this now and talk to former intelligence officer Miri Aysin. She's now lecturer at the Interdisciplinary Centre of Private College in Herzliya in Israel. Miri, evening to you. I mean, to me, it seems blindingly obvious. I wonder what you think. What point is Israel trying to make with its decision to continue building settlements immediately after that UN vote then?
Well, it's kind of funny. If you think of it from the Israeli point of view, shouldn't it have been a joyous day on Thursday? November 29th is such a momentous day. It's the day that it was decided at the same United Nations 65 years ago to establish two states. And Israel was established 64 years ago. And I want to remind us all that at that time, the absolute rejection was from the Arab side. And here we are 65 years later. And rather than on Thursday being about pro-Palestinian, about a Palestinian state, about something that 70% of Israelis support, it was all about anti-Israel. When I was listening before also to the report about coming out of Tel Aviv, to a certain degree I feel as if we're the bad guys in that sense on what should be a joyous day.
I know, but what about the timing? I mean, I go back to my question.
We want it to be both sides.
I know, but what about the timing? You know, the timing of the announcement of those settlements. It wasn't great timing, was it, therefore? Not good PR then?
Well, there's also a question in Israel of our own domestic front. When I was interviewed here over a week ago, I was accused of the fact that Israel was waging an operation because of elections, something I really seriously disagree with. I have to say that this time I do think that the timing of the Israeli government decision has everything to do with our domestic elections and not necessarily with what's going on in the world. In Israel, domestically, the domestic front for Benjamin Netanyahu, for Avigdor Lieberman, for those who have stood so clearly both against the idea of Palestine being declared as a state, not as a state in general, but now without negotiations, without us as a partner to do it one-sided, to impose it on Israel, and they feel the strong need to give a response. As an Israeli, I can say that has to do with domestic politics. Personally, I don't necessarily adhere to that step. I think you've heard a lot of criticism here in Israel in linking it in such a way, but that is also about politics.
I mean, was it election campaign rhetoric then, or popularity rhetoric, or do you think it will actually happen?
Well, that's one of the questions that we ask ourselves. For that to happen, you're talking also about budget. You're talking about infrastructure. You're talking about construction. There's been an enormous debate in Israel over the last year or two, together with the debate in most of Europe, in the United States, in many of the countries that have been in a recession, about the whole housing issue, construction, the cost of living. If you go right now as a government and say what we're investing in right now is in a place that the mainstream of Israel doesn't necessarily think you should invest in, you're making an election campaign which may not go over well, Kevin. And I think in that sense, it is more rhetoric. I'm not sure it will actually come to be. And the elections in Israel are in a little over 2 months. And I think that we'll see a change, a little under 2 months. We'll see a change after the elections when it comes to this.
Nonetheless, around a lot of the world, that news went down like a lead balloon. I mean, Israel and the US are now in a minority, no matter how you look at it. Where does this leave Israel's claim to territories now that so many nations overwhelmingly want to see Palestine independence?
I don't surprise you, Kevin, by saying that Israelis, the majority of Israelis, including this government, by the way, have stated clearly that they'd like to see Palestine independent. Both of us understand that there's a difference between saying Palestine independent and doing it on your own with the United Nations without Israel as a partner, as if saying that the impediment is just the state that's here. Let's do this hand in hand. Let's look forward and see how we come back to the table. Let's not Oh, well, when it hasn't worked over the years, I'm one of the ones, I'm a mother. Whenever people come to me with arguments, I say, why don't we look at both sides? And in this case, I want to look at both sides. The decision that was made on Thursday, from my point of view as an Israeli, was anti-Israel, not just pro-Palestinian. I want to see something which is a win-win situation, one that's both pro-Palestinian, that goes towards an independent state, not just in rhetoric, not just in declarations, but in actuality, and to do so so, those same Palestinians, Kevin, have to come back to the negotiation table. For the last 4 years, they have refused to do so. They've refused time and again, and we're all aware of that. It was one of the main reasons that the 40 states that did abstain from the vote on Thursday did so, because of that rejection of Israel. It isn't just about being pro-Palestine. It's also about accepting Israel here, and that's where we need to go.
With your pragmatic head on them with this, do you think it's ever going to happen sometime soon?
I want to hope that people will get beyond their initial reaction to the way they look at Israel. You know, in Israel, we have open, free elections, as you have in many places around the world. We have a very vibrant politics, lots of different opinions. In Israel, we look at things from the security point of view for a variety of reasons. You can critique us about that, I understand, but that's what we're looking at. I think that this government has stated clearly that they're willing to negotiate, that they're willing to come to a compromise, that they want to see a two-state solution. It isn't the same as imposing it from the outside. Sit down at a table, agree to meet. I honestly believe at this stage that Mahmoud Abbas is not willing to meet this government. I want to hope that perhaps somebody else in the Palestine Authority, now calling itself Palestine, will agree to come meet this government and to talk about it. If they don't sit down, Kevin, we're never going to know.
But of course, Israel maybe not helping the matter, it could be said. On top of the announcement of the settlements, Israel's also announced it's now going to withhold over $100 million of aid to the Palestinians to pay back debts to Israeli companies. Is that really an option when, of course, you've got the world's largest refugee populations on your doorstep?
Well, that refugee population is something that needs to be taken care of in any case. But I'm looking at these as part of the last 4 years. And before we talked about the last 21 years, and then you get to the 65 years, and everybody wants to know, why isn't it over yet? There's a variety of reasons. We need to feel security. The Palestinians deserve a state. Most Israelis say that openly. When I say most, I'm talking about 70% of Israelis overwhelmingly want to see Palestine as an independent state. Also, not just the rest of the world, but both sides need to be addressed. And it isn't necessarily just about the settlements. Kevin, just a few years ago, with the settlement issue, Israel said, okay, we're going to freeze them. And we froze them, and the Palestinians refused to come to the table. And we froze them again, and the Palestinians refused to come to the table. And for the last 3 years, they've been focused at the United Nations at trying to impose a resolution rather than trying to negotiate one. Negotiations are not an imposition. It's two sides who sit down together, and it's going to be hard for both sides. So on the one hand, I want to rejoice. I want that win-win. But that win-win means that the other side, that's Palestine, Kevin, openly state that they accept our right to be here, our being here, and not just being anti. All of the things I've heard on RT also, just from right now, is that now it's all about anti-Israel, anti-law. So we're continuing with the same idea started at the United Nations of taking it further in anti and not in negotiations.
OK, Miri, thank you ever so much for being on the programme. We do appreciate your time. Miri Eisen there from the Interdisciplinary Centre in Herzliya.
A pleasure.
Thank you.